The answer to this question depends on how one interprets the words of a British colonel at a ceremony in Singapore after the Japanese took that city in World War II. Hi, I'm Vijay Balan, and welcome to episode 3 of Little Known Histories, where I unpack some of the truths behind my book, The Swaraj Spy. Earlier episodes are available elsewhere on this platform. After the Japanese landed troops in northern Malaya at the same time as they were bombing Pearl Harbor many thousands of miles away, they forged relentlessly down the Malayan Peninsula towards Singapore. What do you think one of the secrets to their success was? It was a bicycle. While the English, Australian, and Indian soldiers defended the roads, the Japanese kept pedaling around them through rubber estates and jungle paths and kept repeatedly showing up behind the defenders. As they advanced, Gyani Pritam Singh, whom you met in the last episode, and his small team of 14 used bullhorns to appeal to the Indian soldiers in Indian languages, asking them to surrender and switch sides. Major Fujiwara, whom you also met in episode 2, had leaflets printed in many Indian languages and English and dropped from the air. Soon, a band of Indian soldiers led by Captain Mohan Singh, all wearing white armbands with the letter F in red, F for Fujiwara Kikan, the word Kikan means organization, joined the invaders. Two mighty Royal Navy battleships, the Prince of Wales and the Repulse, were sunk by Japanese bombers. Pretty soon, the Japanese controlled land, sea, and air in Malaya, and the road to Singapore was wide open. Now, the British had built Singapore as a mighty sea fortress with big guns that would blast out of the water any ship or fleet threatening the Straits of Malacca. But the Japanese didn't come by sea. They came from the other direction, from the north, by land. And on February 15, 1942, Singapore fell to the Japanese with all those big guns, so to speak, pointing in the wrong direction. British General Percival's surrender of 85,000 troops that day was the largest surrender of British arms in history. 2 days later, on February 17, 1942, the Japanese did something very interesting. They separated 40,000 captured Indian soldiers from their British officers and assembled them at an old racecourse in Singapore called Farrer Park. At the ceremony at Farrer Park, the first person to speak was Lieutenant Colonel Hunt of the British Malaya Command. He made a brief speech handing over Indian soldiers to the Japanese and asking Indian soldiers to follow Japanese orders from that point on. Now, years later, after the end of the war, at a trial, lawyers cited that statement as one of abandonment, and that therefore the Indian soldiers who later chose to join the Indian National Army and fight the British were not guilty of treason. Now, the British point was that Hunt was merely trying to make sure that no harm was done for the Indians, and he was trying to ease their situation. Did the British abandon Indian soldiers on that day in Singapore in World War II? You be the judge. The next person to speak was Major Fujiwara with his message of Asia for Asians, and he also formally handed over the assembled Indian soldiers to the command of Captain Mohan Singh. Now, all of this took time because his speech had to be translated from Japanese to English and then to Hindustani. Captain Mohan Singh, a fiery orator, spoke in Hindustani. Many thousands of soldiers leapt to their feet and tossed their caps in the air in joy when he asked them to join the Indian National Army to fight against the British to gain independence for India. Gyani Pritam Singh ended the ceremony welcoming all of the soldiers to the INA. 15,000 Indian soldiers joined the Indian National Army on February 17, 1942. And that was the formal birth of the INA. Truth be told, Many thousands of Indian soldiers refused to break the oath of allegiance and loyalty to the British Crown, and they faced unspeakable horrors at the hands of the Japanese as prisoners of war. In my next episode, I will talk about the dramatic increase in Japanese support for the INA, but also about the first cracks in that edifice of cooperation between the Japanese and the Indians. Thank you so very much for watching.